Well, the Smithsonian's Air and Space Museum is among the most popular attractions around here in our region. Only on 7 tonight, we take you behind the scenes as curators are offering to give away parts of the collection, in part to make room for new additions.
Our Chris Van Cleve was lucky enough to go along, and he explains how the museum decides what stays and what goes.
Anyone need a Vietnam-era Marine Corps chopper? Because the Smithsonian's Udvar-Hazy Center is willing to part with theirs. This vintage bird is one of a long list of items ranging from spacesuits to rocket engines to this giant C-130 cargo plane that the museum is willing to give away.
In the museum field, we call it de-accessioning, and this is the process of getting rid of items that are surplus to the museum's objectives or goals.
Roger Connor is a museum specialist at the Smithsonian. He says some of the items are duplicates. Others, like this aging fighter, they just don't have room to display properly and would like to find it a good home. But in the case of the UH-34, it's more about the helicopter's story. It was a trainer that never saw action.
If we're going to tell the story of the Marines flying helicopters in combat, we want an aircraft that flew in combat. So we're actively looking for a replacement.
Like any museum, there will always be new exhibits coming in and some old things going away. But don't worry, when it comes to your favorites, things like the Blackbird or Space Shuttle Discovery, those are here to stay.
In 2009, the Air and Space Museum parted with this World War II B-17 bomber. It hadn't seen combat and needed restoration. The National Museum of the Mighty 8th Air Force in Savannah, Georgia, took on the project and has made the plane the centerpiece of its museum.
They had an excess airplane in their inventory and gave us a call one day and said, would y'all like a B-17? Of course, that was our #1 mission, was to acquire a B-17 for this museum, so we obviously said yes.
The Smithsonian sent this full-size model of an experimental plane packing to New York and the CRADLE of Aviation Museum in the hometown of the plane's designer.
It meant a lot to a lot of the people who live up here, who retired up here. It's going to be a very unique part of our collection.
And it leaves room for things like this seaplane that survived the bombing of Pearl Harbor and that same day when hunting for the Japanese fleet. She needs a little work, but will eventually be out for the world to see. Chris Van Cleve, ABC 7 News.